All right, so today we're jumping into a really high-stakes world, the early church. And let me tell you, their biggest battles, they weren't fought with swords. Nope, they were fought with words, with philosophy, and with some seriously razor-sharp arguments.
I mean, really, just stop and think about that for a second. Imagine your neighbor's gossip. Yeah, their gossip could actually get you killed. We're not talking about some government spy or a secret police force here. We're talking about the person living right next door. A simple rumor they start, one little accusation, and boom, you could be arrested and even executed.
And you know, for Christians in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, this wasn't just a scary thought experiment. It was their reality. See, being a Christian was technically illegal, but it's not like the Roman Empire was on some massive, systematic manhunt. The persecution was usually local. It would get sparked by mob anger, or by these crazy popular rumors, or honestly, just a personal grudge. Your entire life could literally depend on whether your neighbors liked you or not.
So in this incredibly hostile environment, this group of, well, brilliant Christian thinkers started to emerge. We know them today as the apologists. And just to be clear, apologist here means defender. It doesn't mean they were going around saying sorry for everything. These guys didn't use violence. Their weapon was reason. They wrote these incredible open letters to emperors, to the public, basically just pleading for a fair hearing against this tidal wave of misinformation.
Okay, so this is where it gets really fascinating. These apologists, they were essentially fighting a war on two completely different fronts at the same time. On one hand, they had to defend their faith from these vicious attacks coming from, the streets. And on the other hand, they had to deal with these super sophisticated arguments coming from the ivory towers of the intellectual elite.
So let's break that down. On one front, you've got the general public, and they're spreading these just wild, sensational rumors about what Christians were supposedly doing behind closed doors. Then, on the other front, you've got the intellectual elite, the cultured philosophers, the aristocrats. And they weren't attacking Christianity for its weird practices. No, they were attacking it for being, in their eyes, philosophically, well, stupid. All right, so let's tackle that first front, the wild rumors. And to really get a sense of the threat they were facing, you have to understand just how bizarre and, frankly, horrifying these accusations actually were.
Okay, so picture this. Outsiders hear that Christians hold these secret weekly get-togethers called love feasts, and they also know Christians call each other brother and sister. So their minds go to the worst possible place: candlelit orgies and incest. Then they hear Christians talk about eating the body and blood of their Savior. Well, that gets twisted into these grotesque accusations of ritual cannibalism, of eating newborn babies. It's insane. And on top of all that, because Christians refused to worship the Roman statues, they were branded as atheists. And let me tell you, that was a really dangerous charge in a world that believed the gods were what held society together.
And look at this. This piece of graffiti, actually found scratched into a wall in Rome, it just perfectly illustrates the level of mockery they were dealing with. It shows a man worshiping a crucified figure, but with the head of a donkey. This was an old slander against Jews that just got passed right on to the Christians. So you can see, this wasn't just a simple disagreement about religion. This was deep, contemptuous ridicule.
Okay, so debunking those crazy rumors was one thing. But the second front, now that was a whole different ballgame. It was much, much more challenging. This was a straight-up battle of wits against some of the sharpest minds in the entire Roman Empire, and these guys viewed Christianity with just pure, unadulterated snobbery.
Yeah, listen to this quote from a pagan intellectual named Celsus. He says Christians are the least cultured and most ignorant kind, who find believers among women and children, or to the cobbler shop. That just perfectly captures the attitude, right? The elite saw Christians as this rabble of uneducated tradespeople, women, and slaves. The very idea that this rabble could have stumbled upon some profound truth that was hidden from the best philosophers, well, to them, that was just utterly laughable, and frankly, offensive.
And their arguments? They were sophisticated. First, they'd claim that anything good in Christian teaching was just stolen and probably misunderstood from Plato and the other Greek philosophers. Then they'd mock the Christian God as this weird contradiction, somehow impossibly distant but also a nosy busybody constantly meddling in human affairs. And the resurrection? Oh man, to them, that was the absolute height of absurdity. How could a god possibly reassemble a body that had been burned to ash or eaten by fish? It was just illogical.
So all of these intellectual attacks, they really forced Christians into a corner. They had to ask themselves a really crucial question. What is our relationship with the pagan culture that's all around us? And more specifically, what on earth do we do with Greek philosophy? And the answer wasn't simple. In fact, two major, totally opposing camps emerged. You had one side, let's call them the rejectionists. They saw pagan philosophy as this dangerous contaminant that would just pollute the pure doctrine of the faith. But then you had the other side, the integrationists, and they believed that philosophy, yeah, it was imperfect, but it contained these little glimpses of truth that could actually be used as a bridge to the gospel.
Now, the lead voice for the rejectionists was the great North African writer Tertullian, and for him, there was just no middle ground. It was complete and total opposition. He famously asked, what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? What does the academy have to do with the church? To him, Athens, the home of philosophy, and Jerusalem, the home of faith, were just fundamentally incompatible. He was convinced that trying to mix them was the source of all heresy.
Then you had another apologist, a guy named Tatian. He took a different, but man, an equally aggressive approach. He basically argued that the Greeks were just a bunch of cultural thieves. He said anything good they had, philosophy, astronomy, geometry, you name it, they'd actually stolen it from older cultures, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, and especially the Hebrews, since Moses was writing long before Plato or Homer ever came along.
But the other side, the integrationists, they had an incredibly powerful tool up their sleeve, the concept of the logos. Now, in Greek philosophy, the logos, which means both word and reason, was this idea of a universal reason, the divine ordering principle of the entire cosmos. It's the reason why logic works. It's why the universe is understandable and not just chaos. And this is where Justin Martyr makes an absolutely brilliant move. He points to the Gospel of John, which starts by identifying Jesus as the Logos made flesh. So, Justin argues, that very same logos that gave guys like Plato and Socrates their little glimpses of truth, well, it was fully and perfectly revealed in the person of Jesus Christ. And what does that mean? It means that Socrates and Plato were, in a way, Christians before Christ. It was a genius argument. He could claim the best of Greek wisdom not as something foreign to be rejected, but as something that ultimately belonged to Christianity all along.
So with arguments like these, the apologists did a masterful job of defending their faith on both fronts, right? They debunked the crazy rumors from the street, and they met the elite critics on their own philosophical turf and won. But there was one problem, one core tension that no argument, no matter how brilliant, could ever truly resolve.
And here's the crucial point. No matter how much the Christians insisted they were good citizens, that they prayed for the emperor, their ultimate loyalty was just not to Rome. And from the Roman perspective, this was a huge problem. Refusing to participate in the state cults, throwing a pinch of incense for the emperor, that wasn't just seen as religious stubbornness. It was seen as tearing at the very social and religious fiber that held the empire together. On top of that, their empire-wide network of bishops was deeply suspicious to a government that fundamentally distrusted any organization it didn't control.
And this beautiful quote from an early Christian text, the address to Diognetus, it just sums up the paradox perfectly. It says, "They live on earth, but are citizens of heaven. They obey all laws, but they live at a level higher than that required by law." You see, they were in the world, but they weren't entirely of the world. And this dual citizenship, this ultimate allegiance to a heavenly kingdom, that was something the Roman Empire could neither understand nor, in the end, tolerate. It left them in this state of permanent tension, a tension that would only be resolved centuries later through waves of persecution and eventually the conversion of the empire itself.